Syed Akbaruddin, India's former permanent representative to the United Nations, joins us. Syed Akbaruddin, we've seen in the past India raise its voice against Pak-based terror at the United Nations, but we've also seen Pakistan, particularly because of its close relationship with China, with its veto powers, getting away each time. Can this be any different?
So, Rajdeep, first of all, between India and Pakistan, the diplomatic bandwidth is very limited. And you know this because you've covered it for so long. Bilaterally, we have very limited leverage with each other. Multilaterally, the world is in an unpredictable, uncertain situation where peace and security globally are not on the main table where things can be sorted out. I mean, look at what's just happened in the last few days. The trouble between Congo and Rwanda could not be resolved in the Security Council. The trouble between Azerbaijan and Armenia could not be resolved. Issues in the South China Sea cannot be resolved. So let's understand that while diplomacy is the first response to try and ensure that differences don't become conflictual, in this case of India and Pakistan, diplomatic leverages are very limited, both bilaterally as well as in multilateral fora. So I don't expect these simmerings that are going on to have very much of a resonance, because to me it looks like Pakistan is playing by its old playbook. Listening to the information minister brought me back memories of when I was the first secretary at the UN in 1998. Pakistan called our High Commissioner at midnight and said, we have information, credible information, that India and Israel are going to attack our nuclear assets. They then called all members of the Security Council, demarched all European Union members, etc., saying, we see an imminent threat right in the middle of the night. I see that playbook being played again, the same old stories of denial, deceit and deception. So it's nothing new.
No, that's the point. If it's the same old story of denial, deception, why doesn't the world call it out? Why does the United States not call it out? Why do countries which claim otherwise, that they are part of a global coalition against terror, not call out Pakistan? Is it the China angle? That China, for example, when it came to Masood Azhar, resisted getting him called a designated terrorist. I think you were there at the United Nations at the time.
Yes, it's true that many of these things in the United Nations are done not in face-to-face negotiations, but through what they call the by circulation. And as you said, Masood Azhar, took us 20 years to get him designated as a terrorist, simply because the United Nations is not fit for purpose to address terrorism. It was fit for purpose in 1945 to address different types of threats to peace and security. Those threats have now changed. The United Nations has not kept in pace, and to expect that to address issues as complex as India and Pakistan would be difficult to even fathom, because let me tell you, the last time a formal meeting of the United Nations Security Council on India and Pakistan took place was in 1965. That's 60 years ago, Rajdeep. So let's be clear that most countries will shun the issue of India and Pakistan. The last time there was an informal attempt by China after Article 370 was annulled. China tried to call the informal discussion, and every member spoke up saying, India and Pakistan issues, this is not the place, let them sort it out separately. And therefore, despite its best effort, China couldn't get anything on the agenda. So don't expect any difference now. Multilateral approaches to peace and security are perhaps not the way to go about.
But in a way, the very fact that Pakistan managed to exclude TRF, the Resistance Forum, which had claimed responsibility for the Pahalgam attack, the Baisaran attack, excluded from the resolution, clearly suggests that dal mein kuch kala hai, that they don't want to, they will never admit to having sponsored and fostered these groups on their soil. And as I said, they get away with it each time.
So, Rajdeep, you're right that it's pretty clear that by supporting a organization which had claimed at the time when the United Nations Security Council was discussing this issue, the TRF had actually claimed that it was responsible. The last time it happened, the Jaish-e-Mohammed had claimed, and we were able to put it in. Then the Jaish recanted, like the TRF has recanted now. And I remember the then Pakistani Foreign Minister, Shah Mohammad Qureshi, said, no, the Jaish-e-Mohammed people have told us they are not involved. So this is the same game. But having said that, again, if consensus is the basis for decision making, which it is in this case of a press release, which is not even in a formal meeting, but by a circulation procedure, you can expect that it's never going to go through when out of the 15 members, 2 members will be opposed to it. That said, let's be clear, the others are pretty understanding of what happens. Let us not think like you have come to the conclusion that why is Pakistan trying and supporting an organization which nobody else knows, which has a track record of support for of indulging in terror activities. Don't you think the rest of the countries know? But it's by consensus. So the United Nations system is a suboptimal system. That suboptimal system doesn't work in such cases.
So let me ask you in conclusion, what's the best way forward? You've got the US Secretary of State ringing up Jaishankar. He's going to ring up the Pakistan counterpart. What's, according to you, the best way to deal with a country that refuses to acknowledge its role in sponsoring terror? How does one remove this veil of deniability?
So Rajdeep, as I told you, I don't see diplomacy as the way forward. I've seen this happen before. John Kerry had phoned Mrs. Sushma Swaraj prior to a similar attack previously in 2016. So it's not unusual for secretaries of state to do this effort, to make that effort. Having said that, let's be clear, if diplomacy is not there, and if we do not want an escalation of a nature that nobody will have control on, then there are multiple areas which can be looked at. For example, there are non-traditional security responses that can be looked at. I'm not going to get into what they are because those in authority have a better picture of what non-traditional security responses can be. But it has to be meaningful because diplomacy has played its hand. The maximum we could have done was the Indus Water Treaty. We've thrown the dice there. We've indicated that we will keep it in abeyance, but that's not an immediate solution. It will have long-term and middle-term repercussions. You want other repercussions of a meaningful nature, less than kinetic. Perhaps non-traditional mechanisms are there, and let's leave it at that because these are best handled by those who know what they are and to use those things. In any case, I think a meaningful response is required now to establish some form of deterrence.
My final question, if India is to exercise one of those kinetic options, do you believe the world will stand by India given the horror of what happened in Baisaran?
So let me put it another way. I think India has the diplomatic ability to ward off any challenges to a response that it is now taking in self-defense. There are, under international law, options available for self-defense after an attack of this sort. So India's diplomatic abilities can easily manage that. I'm not going to say whether we will isolate or not, but the fallout for India is going to be limited in any response that we undertake, and that would perhaps be where diplomacy will come into play. It will be at the forefront, not in trying to resolve the issue, but to contain the fallout.
Okay. I'm going to leave it there, Syed Akbaruddin, for giving us a sense of how the UN operates in such conflict situations, what India's options are, and really exposing in a way Pakistan's continuous attempt to deny and be deceitful about terror. I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much, our former
Thank you.
envoy to the United Nations.